Have you wondered what exactly Charles Leclerc and Frédéric Vasseur saw in Lewis Hamilton's data that left them completely surprised? And why that moment at Fiorano could mark a before and after for Ferrari in 2026? From the first moment the SF-26 hit the Fiorano asphalt, Ferrari wasn't looking for headlines, it was looking for answers, and what started as a simple shakedown ended up becoming an internal revelation that completely changed the team's perception of its own project. When Lewis Hamilton went out onto the track to complete those first laps, everything seemed part of the usual protocol: demonstration tires, controlled laps, no real demands. But at the wall, the story was completely different. Because while the car was rolling, the engineers began to receive the first real data from the SF-26. And that is where a sensation began to build that no one expected to come so early in the season. What Ferrari had pursued for years was not simply a fast car, but an understandable car, a car that responded exactly as the team projected in the simulator, and for too long that connection was broken. However, at that moment, lap after lap, the numbers that appeared on the screens began to fit almost perfectly with what had unfolded in Maranello during the winter. That direct correlation between simulator and track was not only good, it was precise, consistent, almost exact, something that automatically set off all the positive alarms inside the box, because it meant that, for the first time in a long time, Ferrari had a reliable technical base on which to build its season. And this is where the human factor comes in, because both Frédéric Vasseur and Charles Leclerc were observing this data live, little by little understanding that what they had in front of them was not a simple incremental improvement, but a structural change in the behavior of the car. It wasn't just that the SF-26 had better traction or that it was more stable at corner entry, it was that every parameter matched what was expected, every reaction of the car made sense, every adjustment responded logically, and that eliminated one of Ferrari's biggest historical problems: uncertainty. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton was beginning to make his mark on something beyond laps completed, because his feedback was not only positive, but incredibly consistent. There were no contradictions between what I felt on the track and what the data reflected, and that further reinforced the team's confidence that the SF-26 was not a capricious car, but rather a predictable, stable, and above all, exploitable machine. This is key because in modern Formula One it is not enough to have performance, you need to understand how and when to use it, and Ferrari had not had that clarity for too long. That was the real turning point of the day, not a fast lap, not a spectacular time, but confirmation that the car was responding exactly as it should, something that left Leclerc and Vasseur surprised because it meant that all the winter work, every adjustment in the wind tunnel, every simulation, every technical decision, was finally aligned with reality. And in a sport where milliseconds separate success from failure, having that solid foundation isn't just an advantage, it's a direct threat to the rest of the field. And this is where both Charles Leclerc and Frédéric Vasseur begin to realize that Lewis Hamilton's data not only validates the winter's work, but is exposing a radical change in the car's philosophy. Because when engineers begin to analyze the telemetry in detail, they discover that the aerodynamic balance of the SF-26 has left behind that extreme character of the SF-25. It is no longer a car aggressively loaded to the front axle. It no longer requires a specific driving style. Now we are talking about a much more neutral car, much more balanced, and that has a direct consequence. It expands the performance window. This means the car can perform well in more conditions, on more circuits, and with different driving styles, something Ferrari simply did not have in previous seasons. And this is where the internal reaction begins to transform into something more serious, because Leclerc not only observes the data, he mentally compares it with everything he has experienced in previous years with Ferrari, and what he is seeing completely breaks that pattern. There are no longer unpredictable peaks, there are no sudden changes in behavior between slow and fast corners, there is no longer that feeling of always being on the edge of losing the car. What Hamilton's data shows is a constant flow, a logical progression through each phase of the corner, and that's exactly what defines a truly competitive car. For his part, Frédéric Vasseur quickly understands the most important implication of all this, and it has nothing to do with Fiorano, it has to do with the future. Because if the simulator now accurately reflects reality, Ferrari can develop the car much more aggressively and efficiently during the season. Every improvement they test at Maranello will be much more likely to work on the track, reducing errors, accelerating the evolution of the car, and most importantly, allowing them to react faster than their rivals. This is not just a technical advantage, it is a long-term strategic advantage. And at the center of everything, Lewis Hamilton appears again, because his way of driving is being key to confirming this new direction. Unlike the previous year, where it constantly fought against the car, now its inputs are clean, progressive, perfectly aligned with the behavior of the SF-26. This allows engineers to read the data without noise, without distortions, understanding exactly what the car is doing at all times. And when a driver and a car speak the same language, the room for improvement skyrockets. This is the point where initial surprise turns into conviction, because both Leclerc and Vasseur begin to assume that Ferrari has not only improved, Ferrari has corrected one of its biggest structural defects. And that completely changes the team's ceiling for 2026, because they no longer depend on finding perfect setups every weekend. They now have a solid, predictable, and above all, developable base. What Charles Leclerc and Frédéric Vasseur saw at Fiorano is not simply an improvement, it is a clear sign that Ferrari has regained something that defines championship teams: total control over its own car. For years, Ferrari had lived in a kind of constant uncertainty, where every weekend was an unknown, where performance depended on finding an extremely narrow window of operation, and where any change could completely destabilize the car. But now, with what Lewis Hamilton's data shows, that narrative begins to completely break down. Because when you have a car that is predictable, consistent, and well correlated with the simulator, you stop reacting and start anticipating. And this has a direct consequence that goes far beyond Fiorano himself, because Ferrari now has the ability to evolve the SF-26 with a precision that simply did not exist before. Each technical decision stops being a bet and becomes a calculated step. Each improvement has a solid foundation behind it, and that drastically reduces the margin of error. In a championship where all teams are separated by minimal details, this ability can be the difference between fighting for podiums or fighting for the championship. But the most shocking of all is how this change even redefines the internal dynamics of the team. Charles Leclerc, who for years had been the driver perfectly adapted to Ferrari's extreme concept, now finds himself facing a more neutral, more balanced car, which not only favors Lewis Hamilton, but also raises the general level of both. And this is key because when you have two drivers capable of extracting the most from a stable car, development accelerates even more, internal competition grows, and the team's ceiling naturally rises. Meanwhile, Frédéric Vasseur understands that what happened in that test cannot remain a simple preseason anecdote, because what they have unlocked is a competitive tool that Ferrari had been pursuing for years. It is no longer just about having a fast car, but about having a car that you can improve without getting lost in the process. A car that responds, that evolves, and that allows you to build a solid season from the ground up. And so, what really surprised Leclerc and Vasseur was not a specific number in the telemetry, but the confirmation of something much bigger. Ferrari finally has a car it can trust. And in modern Formula One, that confidence is not just an advantage. It is the beginning of something much more dangerous for the rest of the grid. Whenever you want, I recommend expanding the first block even further, because that is where the greatest narrative impact is built and where you can add even more technical depth without repeating information. The reality is that what happened in Fiorano was not a simple test, nor even a good start to the season. It was the moment in which Ferrari confirmed that, after years of doubts, errors, and lack of clear direction, it has finally managed to align all the key pieces of its project. Because what Lewis Hamilton's data revealed not only surprised Charles Leclerc and Frédéric Vasseur, it made them understand that they are facing something completely different from what they had had in previous seasons. We are not just talking about a faster car, but about a car that responds, that behaves logically, that connects the simulator with the track, and that eliminates that uncertainty that had conditioned Ferrari so much in the past. And when a team achieves that, it stops depending on external circumstances and begins to build its own destiny within the championship. Because in the end, the big difference is not in a lap, nor in a test, nor even in a circuit like Fiorano. It is in the base. And Ferrari, for the first time in a long time, has a real, solid, and, above all, exploitable base. That's what really changes the landscape, that's what transforms surprise into expectation. And that's what makes the SF-26 more than just a promising single-seater. It makes it a serious threat. Now the big question is no longer whether Ferrari has improved. The real question is how far they can go with this car if everything we saw at Fiorano holds true when the real battle begins. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.